Hello guys, welcome to your next video. Today's video notes are over comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. So you should have gotten a pink sheet of paper. You need to cut and glue that pink sheet of paper into your notebook on the next page. So I am gluing mine down right now. I have already cut it. And then we will be ready to start. So first page of notes is obviously just over comparing fractions, decimals, and percents, and then we will do notes over ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, so in each of these, when you are comparing, this one says to circle the largest number, this one says to circle the smallest number. You should also know how to use your greater than, less than, or equal to sign. So same exact thing. Obviously, we need to show our work here. So with comparing fractions, decimals, and percents, they all must be in the exact same form. So must use same form. They either all need to be all fractions so you either need all fractions with same denominators, they either need to be all decimals, or they need to be all percents. You cannot compare a fraction to a decimal to a percent to a fraction. You can't do it. They all have to be in the same form in order for you to be able to compare and order them. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few different ways. In this first way, in this number 1, you are given two fractions, 3/9 and 12/13. They have to have that common denominator, so 9 and 13, I have to have the same denominator. But there is a trick to this that I'm going to show you. So if I have 3/9 and 12/13, I'm going to write it like so. And then I taught you guys that butterfly method, or not the butterfly method, excuse me, the cross multiplication method. So I'm going to do that cross multiplication method. I'm going to take my 9, and I'm going to multiply it by my 12. And then I'm going to take my 13, and I'm going to multiply it by my 3. Okay, I always go bottom to top when I do this. That way my numbers are written on the correct side. Because if they're not written on the correct side, I'm going to have the wrong number being the largest number. And I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure that I am being precise, and I'm going 9 times 12, and I'm writing the answer right here. I'm doing 3 times 13, and I'm writing the answer right here. It needs to be that exact same manner. So 9 times 12 is 108, and then 3 times 13 is 39. Well, the largest number in this case is that 108, so that tells me that if 108 is larger than 39, 12/13 is larger than 3/9, which means 12/13 is my largest number. So if you have both fractions, you can use your cross multiplication method. It's a lot easier than getting common denominators, in my opinion. But you can also go the common denominator route. It is your choice. Okay, the next 3, I have a fraction and a decimal, a fraction and a percent, a decimal and a percent. I almost always go to decimals. I pretty much always compare decimals because it is so much easier to do decimals because decimals are the common ground between fractions and percentages. They're right in the middle, so it's the easiest. and it just makes the most sense. So I almost always change all of my fractions and percents into decimals and compare that way. So on this next problem, I have 6/10. That is one that I do need to have memorized off the top of my head. Even though it has to be memorized, you still have to show your work. So I have 6/10. I know that that's 0.6. And I know that I am comparing that to 0.06. So when I compare my decimals, I want to make sure that I have the same number of numbers after my decimal. So here I have 1, here I have 2, which means I need to add a 0. That way I'm comparing 60 compared to 6. That way they're the same amount of decimals, makes it a lot easier to compare, and then eventually to order when we do that next. So between 60 and 6, my largest number is obviously 0.60, which means 6/10 is my largest number. So I'm going to circle that one. Okay, next one, I have 3/5. Because this we know off the top of our head and it's a percentage, totally fine to leave it to percentages. I'm not saying you have to go to decimals, they just have to be in the same form. Okay, so 3/5, that one should be memorized off the top of your head because 3/5 is going to give you 60%, which means I am comparing 60% to 40%. And the question is, would I rather have a 60% on a test or a 40% on the test? Well, even though they're both bad, I'd still rather have a 60% on the test, which means 3/5 is my largest number. Okay, last question that we're going to do together is I have 0.305 and 35%. Well, because the easiest thing that I can do is change them both to decimals. I'm going to keep my first decimal the same, and I'm going to change 35% into a decimal, which means I'm going to take my decimal point, which is behind the 5, and I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the left, so I go 1, 2, which means my decimal is 0.35. I have 3 numbers over here, which means I need to have 3 numbers over here, which means I need to add a 0. And would I rather have 305 or would I rather have 350? Well, I would rather have 350 over 305, so that means 35% is the largest number, which means that I would circle 35%. So with the next 4, you guys are going to do them all on your own. You are going to find the smallest number in this one. So we've been doing the largest number. Which would you rather have? Think about it this way. Which one would you not rather have? What's the smallest? So show your work. Circle the smallest number for me, please. Do that now. Pause the video. When you are done, then you can unpause the video and we'll move on. So the next, I'm going to turn my page and I'm going to label it. This time we're going to label it with ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. So ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. Once again, guys, I do not care whether you put them all into fractions, whether you with common denominators, whether you put them all into decimals, or whether you put them all into percents. It is your choice. So I'm perfectly fine with whatever you want to do. I will pretty much always do decimals unless it's really simple to do one of the others. Okay, so just wanting to give you a heads up. Okay, so we do it all exactly the same. So here's our example. Example 1. let's have 0.43 4/9, 40%, and we'll do 3/8. Okay, so those are our 4 numbers that we're going to work with. You guys have to be able to order them from greatest to least or least to greatest, whichever one they're asking you for. So please make sure that you are being very specific and doing the one that they are asking you for. Okay, so first things first, you need to get them all into the same form. I almost always do decimals, as I already said. Okay, so I already have 1 as a decimal, so that's 0.43. I'm going to keep that as a decimal. Then I have 4/9. Well, 4/9 should be one that's memorized. And hopefully you remember that 4/9 is 0.4 repeating. So I'm going to put 0.44 because I want 2 numbers after my decimal, 2 numbers after my decimal. 40% is, hopefully remember, 0.40. Notice I'm still keeping my 2 decimals. And then 3/8 is also one that you guys need to have memorized. So hopefully you remember that 3/8 is 0.375. Well, now I have 3 numbers, and I have 2, 2, and 2, which means I need to add a 0 after the 40, a 4 after the 4, because that 4 was repeating, and a 0 after the 3. Now that I have my 3 in a row. So once I've lined them up, it usually makes it a little bit simpler. You don't have to line them up. I just think that lining them up I can easily see. So I have 430, 444, 400, and 375. I want us to order these from least to greatest. Okay, so the way that I do this is I look at this and I go, okay, what's the smallest? Well, 375 is the smallest, so that number has to go first. Then I keep looking and I go, 400 is the next smallest, so that's my second. 430 is the next smallest, so that's my third. And 444 is my next smallest, so that's my fourth. So those are my numbers in order from least to greatest. However, I cannot write my answer that way. I must write my answer out, and it must be written out in the original form in which the numbers were given to me. If it is not, it's automatically wrong. Okay, so I have 375. Well, that's 3/8, so I need to write 3/8 first. After 375 is 400, so that's 40%. Next was 430, so that's 0.43. And last was 0.444, which is 4/9. And that is my answer. So as I said, please make sure you are ordering, and please make sure you are putting back in original form. So must put answers back. Into original form. If you don't, I will automatically be marking them wrong. Okay, so we'll do one more together, and then you guys will do one on your own. So example 3, let's do 87 over 200. Then I have 0.44. And I have 43.7%. And then I have 21/50. Okay, so first things first, we need to change them all into the same form. All fractions with common denominators, all decimals, all percentages. You can do whichever one you want. Okay, for me, like I said, easiest is to turn them all into decimals. I'm going to skip this first one for a minute just because it's over 200, so we'll come back to that one. .44 is obviously already a decimal. 43.7, I need to move that decimal 2 places to the left. So my answer for the decimal is 0.437. Then I need to add a 0 behind the 4, that way it's 3 numbers and 3 numbers. 21/50ths, that one is easy to do because all I have to do is multiply by 2. 21 times 2 is 42, so I have 42 over 100, and 42 over 100 is 0.42, and I need to add a 0 because I want those 3 numbers. Okay, so now we're back to this 87 over 200. We've already mentioned that if things are over 100, it makes our life easier. Okay, so I have 87 over 200. I can't necessarily simplify that without getting a decimal in my fraction. Okay, so if I did that, okay, I can still figure this out. So I'm going to divide both by 2, because then I am going to end up with 43.5 over 100. And anything over 100, the top number is your percentage. So that, or is your percentage, and that is also your decimal. So technically, this would then turn to 43.5%. And if I wanted to change that to a decimal, I would then move my decimal 2 places. So my decimal is 0.435. Now, if that was too weird for you, just do 87 divided by 200, and you will get your answer. But like I said, I like to do as least dividing as possible, and dividing by 2 to simplify, changing it to a percentage, changing it to a decimal was the easiest for me. Or you could have just turned all of these into percentages and done it that way as well. Been perfectly fine. So I have 435, 440, 437, and 420. This time I want to do greatest to least. So I'm doing the opposite of what I did the first time. So I want the largest number. Okay, what is the largest number? Well, the largest number I see is 437, so that's my first. My second largest, is 440 is my first largest number, 440. My second largest number is 437. My next largest number is 435, and my next is 420. So then once I have them figured out, I need to write my order from least to greatest, or from greatest to least, in the original form. So it's 0.44, then it's 43.7%, then it's 87 200ths, and last it's 21/50ths. And that would be my answer from greatest to least. So you have to be able to go both ways. So you're going to do one on your own. We will check it in class together. So the last one I'm going to have you guys do is 2.62, 2 2/5, 26.8%, 2.26, and 271%. Now I don't care if you turn them all to decimals, all percentages, or all fractions with common denominators. I don't suggest fractions on this one. I would do percents or I would do decimals. And I want you guys to tell me the answer from least to greatest for me. So finish that problem and you are done with your notes. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.